to his feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect. Garland front of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Roan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Well, it took until late March, but we have our first losing streak of the season. My body simply rejected it. I completely shut down. I've had the flu. I am reacting poorly to this. Maybe I should have taken losses, watched other teams to get a little dose of losing. But after a month and a half without a single loss, my body shut down with these. But we still have so much to break down. And joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I literally warned everyone to be careful. You're going to be staying up late watching the Cavs. You might be inventing things to be frustrated with. And whoops, there's real stuff to be frustrated with. It stinks to lose 3 in a row. It's just a weird time of the season, honestly. And I'm certainly sleepy, trying to fight off any grump. I've had my little moments, my little grumpy thoughts to myself that I know are because I'm not getting enough sleep. And West Coast trip isn't over yet, brother man.
No, it certainly isn't. And, we're going to get to the concerns. I think there is stuff to discuss, both from a kind of macro and micro sense of what we're concerned about in the short term. If there's any of this that we feel, is at least feeding into some angst that we have long term that may not just be the result of this losing streak, but just, general concerns we have overall. But I think we do have to get into these games individually. I do think it's funny when we were doing our kind of preview of this trip, when we were in the midst of the winning streak, we said, when are the losses going to come? When would you like to predict the first loss?
We were both right.
Yeah, we were both right. You predicted Orlando. I predicted Sacramento because I was like, 3 games, 4 nights, second night of a back-to-back, traveling out west. That's probably where it's going to happen. But I wasn't expecting Zach LaVine to miss the game, Domantas Sabonis to miss that game. Sure, Darius Garland was missing, but the Cavs obviously had more than enough. And I thought you and Danny did a tremendous job. Really appreciate Danny filling in with me being very under the weather there, covering that Orlando game. I thought the Clippers game overall was actually a really well-played game for a lot of it. I thought that was a fun game between 2 good teams, and then they just kind of lost some of their process. But that Sacramento loss, that's a bad loss. There's no way to get around it.
Yeah, man. It is. It's just that time of year. And you want to get worked up. You want to overreact. But long time Cavaliers Twitter antagonist Matt Moore coming in with the context to make me feel a little bit better. Honestly, he tweeted today. Cavs offense is first this season. They are 12th in March. The Thunder defense is first on the season. They are 12th in March. The Spurs offense is 16th on the season. They're first. Memphis's defense is 10th. They're 20th. Atlanta's offense is 6th. They're 18th. It's just such a weird part of the season, a weird part of the calendar. And like,
if you want to have a laugh, Carter, don't do it now, but after the podcast, search Matt Moore's tweets, search @HB Basketball. March is meaningless, and see how many results you get. This has been a multi-year campaign of him basically pointing out how it's the least significant, statistically significant month. But, I still think, when it comes to the Cavs and what we've seen over this stretch, I don't think it's dissimilar to other times when they've had skids. I don't think it's too dissimilar to some of their bad habits during the winning streak even. We said multiple times, hey, a few of these games easily could have been a loss. And the question that we had is, are they going to correct some of these bad habits before getting some negative reinforcement? And I think the answer to that was pretty clearly no. Like, there's been some really good games in there. I thought the Memphis game was a terrific performance from them, where they came out, they were engaged. But some of these habits, the turnovers, I would say settling for jump shots, not continually engaging the bigs, and feeding Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and getting some rim pressure going. I think some of those habits are just due to coasting and assuming that they have enough firepower to win in the end. And when you play like that, you're going to get bit a couple times, particularly when you play 3 teams in a row that are all in the play-in picture that really, really need to get these wins. Orlando, 8th seed. Sacramento trying to get into the upper half of the play-in bracket. The Clippers are in the play-in. The Cavs basically are sitting there with an A+ grade already, and they are coasting on their, the extra credit homework that they've been assigned. They already know what their grade is for the regular season. These teams really need to get those wins. And when you're in that situation, you're going to get caught and you're going to get losses.
Yeah, and it's not like it's been 48 minutes of substandard play. It's just been like disastrous 6-minute stretches, I feel, where they just aren't able to get anything going and they pay the piper. You look at that 10-0 run against Orlando, you think about the fact that they didn't have a crazy high turnover game against Sacramento. I think they finished with 12 or 13, 12 in the game. They have 23 points. So it was just like every time they turned it over, it was a straight up pick six. And so it's like not all turnovers are made equal. Not all box scores are made equal. And like, you might look up and down this Cavs box score and say, oh, they played a pretty good game. And, I think Donovan is probably a good example of that, where you look, he goes, and you go, all right, 26 points on 17 shots, 5 and 4, that's a pretty solid Donovan game, but you watch, that wasn't his best second half until some heroics at the very end to get them back in contact. So, like, I just think they're not playing consistent 48 minutes of ball, and that is how you lose games in March.
Yeah, and Donovan's been in a bit of a slump.
All three of the guards. It's just kind of come home to roost for all 3 of them shooting the basketball right now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I don't even know if slump's the right word, right? Because clearly he had a nagging groin issue. He was shut down for a couple games, and then, you're returning from a soft tissue injury. You're not doing conditioning when you're out. There's going to be an adjustment period as you're coming back. And I'm not surprised to see him, take some time to get his footing. There's been bursts where he's looked really good. There's other times where, the shots just aren't falling. And I think from Darius's standpoint, we saw that as he came back from the hip and, the fall where he hit his face. It took him a while. It took him a while to start hitting shots. And I think the last couple games that he's played, he's looked a lot better. He's getting to the rim again. The shots are falling. The Clippers game was a very efficient one until he jacked up those 2 late threes, in just kind of a scramble drill situation. But he looked terrific. Like, I thought he was the best player on the Cavs against the Clippers. He was high pointing rebounds, playing with burst. That step back jumper was terrific. So I give Donovan the exact same grace that we gave Darius, where it's, hey, the shot's not falling, but I feel like he's playing pretty decent overall. But there's been stretches where I thought to close against Orlando, it was just a little too Donovan heavy. I thought it got a little Donovan heavy, went away from Mobley is probably the more accurate way to say it, against Sacramento, when Evan had it really rolling and we just stopped getting him the ball in those last couple minutes. Just not trusting kind of the overall offense and playing the way that we have in the clutch throughout the season, which is really funny because right after we do, a breakdown of how they've played in the clutch, I felt like they've kind of lost their identity in those moments.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. I thought they were, against Orlando, I thought they generated really good looks down the stretch, and
I agree with that.
Their results didn't really match the process. I felt like they lost to the Kings on the other side of the ball, where they just could not get a stop for 3 straight minutes.
The defense has sucked. It just hasn't been good lately.
But I do think it is fair to say, these guys are slumping from 3 a little bit.
Yep.
Donovan is shooting 20% in his 7 games this month, on 8 attempts a game. Darius is still at 32.5%. Ty
For
Jerome,
March.
Ty Jerome is at 24%. Like, those 3 guards, so much of what has made them so freaking flammable this year has been the 3 level scoring for all 3 of them. And really, it's mostly coming at the rim for Ty and Donovan, and that's what's kind of keeping their field goal percentages even in reasonable places. But those guys need to make threes consistently. I mean, Danny Cunningham mentioned it, that the Kings, Clippers, and Magic are all bottom 23-point teams, and all 3 of them made more threes than the Cavs. Like, I'm not saying that, like, I'm not just doing the make or miss league thing, because I do think, like, this is a team that's consistently won games even when they haven't been at their best as shooters, and they haven't been their best elsewhere. So the bottom's kind of fallen out on them, I think, in some of these games, because they haven't been great everywhere else. But, like, boy, it's hard to tell the story of this 3-game losing streak without mentioning that the Orlando Magic made more threes than the Cavs in a basketball game.
Yeah, and the Orlando one, I think, if it wasn't part of this larger kind of stretch where they haven't been shooting well, it would be really easy to say, well, that's an afternoon game, that happens. Like, those games are always weird. We don't have a lot of losses this season, but I feel like a quarter of them have come at very early start times. But you're right. It's definitely part of the story here. I do think it's also a compounding issue where it almost feels like they're playing to conserve energy just a little bit, at least compared to stretches where they've been playing their best, where the energy level has been so high. And some of what you do in those spots is you settle for more jumpers. I feel like the Cavs have settled for more jumpers, and they're not attacking the basket, generating rim pressure at the same rate. And what that ends up doing is you create lower quality 3-point shots as a result of that. Their highest quality looks usually come when they're pressuring the rim and the defense is collapsing and they're in rotation. I feel like sometimes we are settling a little bit more. It's not to the full extent of Boston where the ball never goes inside of the 3-point arc, but I do feel like there's been prolonged stretches, or at least in the stretches where we do go really cold offensively, we just kind of abandon that rim pressure during that time.
Yeah, well, I think some of that is, Evan sat one of these games, and he is a big generator of that rim pressure for us, where, because Jarrett will do it within the scheme, but, like, we saw teams kind of scheme him out of a couple of these second halves.
Yeah.
Where they were really taking away the role and really tagging him hard. And, so that wasn't necessarily there as well as you might like. And then, you also have Darius and, missing a game. And so, like, I do think, like, the avenues to rim pressure haven't been there. And then, rotationally, like, Dean had a really, really good game yesterday, so I'm not trying to dig on him too hard, but, like, there have been a few possessions where he's just not looking at the rim. And he's really not going to be a guy who looks at the rim. Sam Merrill doesn't really look at the rim and attack, in straight lines too often. And
to your point, Dean passed up a layup the other day.
Though I do feel a little bad for him, because I feel like everyone went after him for that, and is like, I don't think he knew how open he was. I think he just got an offensive rebound and was like, all right, when I get offensive rebounds, I kick it out. So, whatever there. But, like, I do think just collectively, there hasn't been a tremendous amount of consistent downhill pressure. Some notable exceptions. I think Max has played really, really well getting downhill. I think Ty, despite the 3-point shot being in shambles right now, has really still gotten downhill and, muscled up some relatively effective games through that. But yeah, I mean, I do think much like those old Warriors teams, like, it's a team that has a proclivity to be side to sidey. And sometimes you just need to get out of your own head and just like, we have to attack downhill consistently.
Yeah, and I felt like that was a big part of Darius's slump was, the 3-point shot isn't falling, but we're getting entire halves where he's only taking shots behind the 3-point arc and he's not driving. And I thought there's been a real change of that the last couple games he's played. I really feel like he's kind of turned the corner, and
Yeah, I
I'm
do
feeling
too.
better.
I feel like he's back to our guy last 2 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like he's been playing really well lately. It was nice to see, Evan had a really tough game against the Clippers. I thought it was probably his worst defensive game of the year. A lot was kind of made of Jared Allen defending Zubac, but some of that was not getting the help defense in time. I thought Mobley was a step slow, and coming off missing a game with foot soreness, maybe that was a factor, but. It was night and day better against Sacramento in comparison. And, sometimes you're going to have those off games, but I thought Mobley's defense and his struggles on that end was a big part of the story against the Clippers.
I do too. And that is part of it. They haven't gotten consistently good play up and down the roster, DeAndre Hunter has had a couple rough games. Sam is having a tough stretch, one of his tougher stretches, I think, of the year, where the shot is okay, but he's not getting up a tremendous amount of attempts, which maybe is reflective of it's one of those things where maybe it's like these last 2 games he's got 3 total 3-point attempts in 26 minutes, and that's like not Sam. And I wonder if that's one of those like bellwether things of like
the health of the overall offense.
Things aren't working that well, so Sam isn't getting his steady diet of even semi-open threes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think they're not playing their best, and even the obvious stuff that does not beget any analysis but still matters. Last 3 games they've missed 20 free throws.
That seems to be a consistent trend. Anytime that they do have one of these slumps, is oh god, they had a really bad free throw week for one reason or another, and I can't provide an explanation for that. It's the least interesting thing to talk about. It's one of those things where you just go, yeah, they should make those. They're better than that.
But it's got to be worth saying. They get an extra 7 points per game, across these 3 games. That's you might have turned all 3 of those into wins or much more competitive games. And
yeah,
and so it's
that's been true
is it the everything factor,
And it's been true of a lot of losses this season where it's come down to the wire. It's been, we missed a bunch of free throws. You had an abnormally bad shooting game from 3. If any of those factors change, you still win. Like the fact that they've still been close in a lot of these losses, not these recent ones, because the Sacramento one shouldn't have come down to that. That doesn't matter. That's not what I'm referring to. But even thinking back to the Houston loss, that's a perfect example of with even how bad they played, if they just shot better from the free throw line, they win the game. And it speaks to the overall floor they have. But you are in one of these spots where during the winning streak, there were issues. We didn't feel that they were playing well. We felt that they were slumping. The starters in particular were having a tough time, and the bench was carrying them. Now the starters are, I think in general, are starting to come back to earth. Darius is playing a little bit better. Mobley had a terrific game. Feels crappy to have wasted that against Sacramento. I feel like Jarrett's been playing well, but the bench lineup hasn't been as effective. They're in a bit of a rut. Those minutes aren't working out as well. So you no longer have that boost coming in consistently from the second unit. And I think that is leaving them vulnerable to potentially dropping some of these games.
Yeah, I mean, the whole premise is the 48 minutes of hell. We don't have lineups that get run off the floor. And, they've been having some lineups that are giving up 9-10 points in two minutes. And those bursts are really damaging, really, really hard to account for, and just kind of change the rhythm. Because I would say in all 3 games, there was an 8-minute stretch where the Cavs looked as good as they've looked all year. Against Orlando, against the Kings, and against the Clippers. But
there was a big stretch of that Clippers game where I was just sitting back being like, this is some basketball, man. Like the Clippers, let's be honest, they are where they are in the standings because they've had guys miss so much time and because Ty Lue is a genius and has kept them, as high as they are. But that's a better team than their record when they're fully healthy. When Kawhi Leonard's playing like that and James Harden's locked in like that and,
Harden
they're
put
healthy.
Mobley on skates in a way I didn't know he could still do.
That's a good team. That's a team that's capable of playing some damn good basketball. And they were putting on a show. That was a lot of fun. It almost reminded me of that first game against OKC in Cleveland, where it's like, this is just high level basketball.
Yeah.
Even when the defense is good, it's not enough.
Yeah, the shot making was nuts. Jay Quest in the YouTube chat just asked about putting someone like Javante in just to see if there's a spark there. Is that something you'd be interested in doing as they try to get through like the malaise of March? Because I think it's kind of an interesting idea.
I think it's something I might go to, but I wouldn't go to it right away because I think there's options within the existing rotation. And I think you saw one of them, honestly, against Sacramento, because one of my gripes with the Clippers game was, and even some recent performances, it seemed like within the rotation, Sam has been the unquestioned kind of seventh man in terms of the minutes played in the rotation. And I felt like there's a lever to pull there of cutting it back and giving Okoro more. And that's exactly what Kenny did against Sacramento. It was, okay, we need to start getting some stops. We need activity.
I thought Ice
we
gave really good minutes.
He gave them great minutes. And honestly, Dean Wade gave them great minutes. Like I thought the two of them really played well in the time that they were out there. But I think that's the first lever I pull is redistributing the minutes within the guys that are already kind of within the top nine. And if you feel that they're coming out flat and the bench guys aren't giving you a lift, that's when I go and I pull the Javante lever and give him an opportunity.
I like the idea of pulling the Javante lever if they look listless in the third quarter. Just the, hey, man, like, because like the thing with Ice that we've always said, is like sometimes if the game's not right, he's not necessarily making the splashy plays. He's making the really fundamentally solid plays, and Javante, I think, is a little bit more chaotic of a player, at least from what we've seen so far. And sometimes, it's like the Lamar Stevens effect on steroids, where sometimes Lamar could come in and like, mess up the energy of a game just by trying real hard and playing his own way, and like, I think neither of us ever really loved when he got consistent minutes, but I didn't mind him when it was like things aren't going well, let's try it, and every now and again he could change the game. And I think Javante is like a much better player than Lamar, to be honest. And like, I do think there is some value in that, and also just like as a little bit of like hey, it's March. I know it's hard to like get up for every game. I got other guys. Like, like there is a little bit of a message you can kind of send there. Not like a malicious one, but like, hey, if I'm not going to get exactly what I'm looking for, I'll try other folks. This is a deep roster. I'll give Jalen Tyson some run. I'll give Green some run. And he did that earlier in the year, and did give guys cracks when the team maybe wasn't as sharp as they needed to be. So I thought it was a good call out from Jay Quest, and I would be okay with that. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think you should ever overlook options that can give you a spark and improve your overall performance, which is why I don't overlook the impact of Zoom AI Companion, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion.
Carter, real quick. I have a little thing I wanted to shout out.
Okay.
Just want to shout out our dear friend Ben Cox, Cavs Twitter lifer, going through some health stuff. He mentioned it on his Twitter. Just want to say, Ben, we love you. Hope you get well soon, brother.
Funny enough, that was actually what I was going to
really.
Yeah,
Ben, we love you so much. Both of us came to this conclusion independently.
Yeah, Ben, I'm happy to hear. I appreciate you sharing your story there. We're definitely thinking about you. We go all the way back to the days at Fear the Sword, and really hoping that your recovery is going well. If you need anything, reach out. We love you, and we're here for you. And while we're in this kind of reminiscing mode, I should also mention, Carter. We're dropping this, at least the audio version of this podcast tomorrow, March 21st. It's going to be the 8-year anniversary of the Chase Down podcast. How about that?
8 years, man. And it does not feel like it's been 8 years. It's
no, it feels like 18.
But I just it's been an easy job being your podcast buddy for the last 8 years. And gosh, that's probably what, 300 episodes, 350 or something like that. It's got to be might be more than that.
It's a lot more than that. I'll get you those numbers after the fact, but yeah, it's a lot more than that. At
Crazy to think about. I love you, buddy.
Absolutely. Love you too, buddy. Yeah, it's these stretches are tough. It's frustrating, particularly when you stay up late.
Oh man, I've been so sleepy. Sleepy.
I've had the benefit of at least one of these games. I was in bed all day, so I was at least a little mentally awake.
Lucky you, yeah. Captain Flu Bug.
Yeah, I'm really living the dream here. But it's going to lead to stretches where you start having concerns. You start, it's confirming some of your prior concerns and things like that. I saw a lot of that, I think playing Zubac and Jonas Valanciunas, two very physical bigs that are going to try to go through you to the basket, that's going to lead to people talking, a lot of blame going towards Jared Allen. And it's kind of funny because even though we lost to the Clippers by 13, they lost the Zubac minutes by 4. So as frustrating as it was to see that wasn't necessarily why they lost the game. Same thing goes for the Jonas Valanciunas minutes. Carter, what would you guess his plus minus was for the game?
I think I know. It was like -6 or something like that.
It was -17.
Wow. Jesus.
It was -17, and he was 5 of 11.
Oh, you know why it was the Mobley, the Mobley run at the end of the third.
Right. But I'm just saying, as the Cavs obviously are going to struggle with those types of bigs because almost every team does. They play such a physical style. They don't always win those minutes, but they're going to try to go through you. They're going to elbow their way to the basket.
They won't win the minutes, but they'll win the fight. I gotta say, it is especially cruel for the NBA. During this sleepwalky ass month of March to send the Cavs on a West Coast trip to this just parade of large Eastern European men to beat us up.
That are all fighting for their play-in lives. It's just great. But you know what? I will take, at least I'll say this. At least it was Jonas instead of Sabonis, because I feel like Sabonis is the toughest cover for Jared Allen in the league.
Yeah.
Jared will do a great job. I've seen him do a great job on Embiid. I've seen it on Jokic. I've seen it on, big physical bigs. Sabonis, that's another animal. That's Şengün with more strength and more skill and a much better skill set when it comes to footwork and things like that to just put bodies under the basket. He is relentless. It's I've seen Jared do it to Giannis. He'll stand up well to him, but Sabonis, that is a tough cover.
Yeah, some dudes are just hard for guys.
Yep.
And Sabonis is league leader in rebounding and all that fun stuff. And yeah, talk about a weird Kings team where they're not that good, but if Sabonis is healthy and it's all right, we got Sabonis off the floor. In comes Jonas Valanciunas. It's just like a nonstop elbow parade. But yeah, it's definitely a weird time. And the confirming priors thing is an interesting thing because I will say, as I was watching. I think it's been no secret on this podcast that I really do think Isaac should be getting a little bit more run. I do, mm-hmm. And I know I'm pretty sure you do too as well. And the natural, whatever the opposite of a beneficiary of that is Sam. And I was sitting here, last night being I just don't know if Sam should be getting this kind of run. The last couple games. And then I look and I'm like, oh, he only played 12 minutes. And it's like, even we have to be careful about confirming our priors, and just
100%.
being like, well, we think Isaac needs more minutes. So when Isaac's not getting the minutes and things go wrong, then see, look how smart we are. It's really hard to analyze. Like sometimes, like having all this, putting all this thought in, and developing all these opinions about the team, I think it sometimes makes it harder to evaluate what we're watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think a big part of why we approach these discussions the way that we do, where, we talk about what we think, we discuss both sides of it, basically to outline our logic so that when we're wrong, you guys at least have an understanding of what went into that, where we went wrong, and then, we can break that down further in the future. And I definitely felt that Sam was getting too much time against the Clippers. I thought, he's held up incredibly well defensively. I thought he's competed well. The overall numbers have been very good for him on the defensive end. But this recent stretch, it hasn't been going as well. There's guys that have been able to kind of take advantage of that opportunity. And I do think that it's interesting because there's a bit of a trickle-down effect here with trading Karis LeVert and George Niang for DeAndre Hunter. And a big part of that is now that third ball handler is consistently Ty Jerome, if you're also still playing one of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, that means that Sam is functionally the small forward in a lot of lineups if he's coming in off the bench. Whereas with Karis LeVert, if he's coming in as the third ball handler and you have one of Donovan or Darius out there, you at least have that longer body to throw at wings. And there's just been a few too many times recently where it's like, oh, Sam's on Ja Morant, or he's on James Harden, or oh, he's on Kawhi Leonard. That's just... It's unrealistic to expect him to hold up in those spots. And I think that that's going to be a bit of a tension going into the playoffs of, hey, we really like what Sam's bringing us. But if we are going to have one of Darius or Donovan on the court at all times, and we're going to play Ty Jerome, you kind of have to almost make a decision between Ty and Sam when it comes to a lot of these minutes.
That's exactly where I was about to get to, which is I was sitting watching the game. I jumped onto the Fear the Sword playback channel and just was hanging with Jackson Flickinger and watching the game, trying to stay awake. And we were talking through that, and there is a certain factor where having Sam in the rotation and Ty in the rotation, both of them in really meaningful ways, does kind of run counter to the upsizing that the addition of DeAndre Hunter was supposed to do for us. Like the whole fun of adding DeAndre is that you can play Okoro, DeAndre, Strus, Wade, all at the kind of in that 2 through 4 range, and obviously Mobley in the 4, and you're just running really big lineups from the two guard up, and when Ty's in as the 1 from the 1 guard up. But like it does kind of break that if you want to guarantee Sam and Ty these minutes in the rotation, because you also are still staggering Darius and Donovan. And so you're always going to have one of Darius or Donovan on the floor, which means that if you want to have Ty and Sam on the floor, you're right. One of them has to play small forward, and then all of a sudden you're small. And part of me thinks that if I were Kenny in the postseason, as always, thank God I'm not, but if I were, I would kind of just choose between the two, and I think, Ty is a 6th man of the year candidate, so I would certainly pick him to start. But I do think there will be matchups that are not great for Ty. Like I was talking to the Dunker Spot boys about how I feel like he'll hold up in the postseason. I was like, I could see a series where like Trae Young or Kobe White or some of these quick guards are torching him and getting around him, and the foot speed is a problem, and it's just better just to play Donovan as the backup 1 for a couple games. And if you do that, it'd be great to have a different kind of guy to bring out onto the floor in Sam Merrill. So like, it's not that I'm just like banish Sam. It's just, I just think you might have to choose if you want to stick to this new identity that you have. And like, I think that it's not even a new identity, but I think it's like a supercharged identity.
Yeah, it's almost like if I'm looking at the current rotation, usually guys 9 and 10 in the rotation are coming in to start the second quarter. I think you can start to, give Sam minutes in that spot if you're going to have Ty come in right away in the first, like in the first quarter. I just think when you're running out there with Darius or Donovan, Ty, and Sam, that's asking a lot, particularly because that's coming in minutes where you only have one of the bigs on the court from a defensive standpoint. And like Darius and Donovan are going to get attacked on defense because of their height, right? Guys are going to try to take advantage of that. Even though they both play good defense individually, they play sound team defense. You are giving up something from a height perspective. That's one of the conceits of this team. Sam has played very good defense. He plays very good positional defense off ball. He's in position. He navigates screens while he's going to do his part. But when you have all three of those guys out there that are 6'4" and below, you don't have the foot speed. But Ty has active hands, but from a defensive standpoint, he's probably the weakest defender on the team. So when you have him out there with two smaller guards, you just start losing defensive integrity. And I just think you put yourself in a tougher position by having all three of them out there at the same time. I think that's been reflected, in the net rating data. You look at the cleaning the glass splits. Sam's a lot less effective as a small forward than he is as a shooting guard. But you're also, the tough thing from Kenny's perspective is he is dealing with 9-10 guys that deserve minutes, that have earned minutes throughout the season and have been reliable throughout the year.
Yeah, it's and I'm trying not to like overreact again to the confirming priors thing. Like,
yeah,
Sam has been helpful even when he slumped most of this year. But I do think there is
this is a very small stretch of him struggling on defense, right?
Yeah, for sure. But like I do think that with that trade, the two guys whose jobs changed the most, or their like context within the team changed the most, are Sam and Dean. And like, because Hunter can do a lot of the Dean facsimile things, like part of the fun of the Hunter trade was like, hey, we are always saying that we are depending on Dean a little more than we would like. Well, now we have a different dude in a similar size that can do Dean stuff plus some. So like I do think Dean has been figuring out where to find his attacks and all that stuff, and a very promising outing to be sure against Sacramento.
Do you think that's what Kenny was thinking, starting him of, hey, let's get Dean going?
Maybe. I wondered, because it was I thought a pretty surprising start to basically play max of the two. By the way, they played a lineup to close the second of Donovan, Hunter, Dean, Mobley, and Jarrett. I was like, oh my god,
large.
That is a large lineup. So like he is still playing, even though they're losing games right now. Like there is some experimentation going on. It's not just pure try to survive the stretch. But yeah, I do think Dean had a lot to figure out, and then because of the stuff with Ty being taking Karras' spot in the rotation, basically, like those two things kind of combined to make this a little bit of an interesting thing for Sam. And then like, because so much of what they can do now is kind of just use Max in the Sam role and use Hunter in the Wade role. And then so I just feel like those are the guys whose jobs changed the most. Like, I thought Isaac's job might change a lot. I haven't really felt that. I feel like, he's getting more minutes at the two, but I think like structurally his job on the team on the floor is not that different.
Yeah. And I was going to say Ty, but I think your argument was sound there. And really, when you look at it, post All-Star break, he's playing 2 minutes per game more than he was before. Like it's a more consistent role, but he's still playing the same brand of basketball that he was before. The context hasn't changed a whole lot.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm interested to see where Kenny takes it, because like this is really the first time I've started to have real opinions about the rotation. And and I would like to think that it's just because of the losses, but I think for the last couple weeks, I think both me and you have been like, I'm not sure I would do it like that. I'm not sure I would roll these guys out in this way. And I do think that's where we should have the Okoro discussion, because I've really liked the Okoro minutes. And I think, you look at the last 3 games, he's played 8, 12, and 16 minutes. So,
Yeah.
And he played 21 against Memphis, was great against Memphis. He started that game. And then he kind of went back down to the bottom into the rotation. And I find that it feels like Kenny tends to go hit the offense button when the team is trailing, not the defense button.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'd like him to press the defense button a little more in terms of the rotations of the subs. He tends to like to downsize, and he tends to like to put in more shooting. Whereas, like, I felt like in that Sacramento game and that Clippers game, I'm like, I want to get stops. I want to fuel the offense by making the other team's life hard. And I would like to see more Isaac, I guess, is really the what I was working my way towards.
I'd like to see more Okoro as well. I agree with you. I've liked how he's been playing. The interesting thing is when you look at kind of the impact that he's had on the Cavs historically, he is a defense first player. There's no denying that. He's going to be a low volume shooter. We've talked about him rounding out his game and getting into the hustle stats and things like that. But he always has had a positive impact, at least when you're talking about the regular season, on the offensive end, because he plays with a lot of pace and he plays with a lot of tempo. Sometimes when he disrupts things on the defensive end, that leads to transition opportunities. He's probably one of the best transition players on the team, and seeks out those opportunities better than almost anybody. And when you look at the on-off stats, in terms of who has the biggest kind of swing offensively, Okoro's right up there. Like he's the offense is 3.5 points better with him on the court. That's just behind Darius, Jarrett, DeAndre, and Evan. Like he's someone that has had a positive impact on that end. And I think with framing it as offense and defense is something that you can do, but for me, it's energy. I feel like he brings consistent life and energy. That's something you really need in the regular season, particularly when you're in the stretch where you have pretty much locked up, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Now, some people are starting to worry about that. That is not a realistic concern. You guys can calm down about that. But when you have that already locked up, having a guy that's going to kind of lift you up collectively, I think that's valuable. I think you need to have that prioritized just a little higher in the rotation. I'm not saying he needs to be the 7th man here coming in off the bench, but I think 8th rather than 9th or 10th is probably where I would have him if you are going with a 10-man rotation.
Yeah, which is so funny because I was sitting here thinking, I'm like, we're probably quibbling over 4 to 5 total minutes in a game.
That's exactly what we're doing, because that's 16 minutes. That's perfect. Like that's it. But that is 100% on the 8th anniversary of this podcast. That right there is exactly the Chase Down podcast. We are
Quibbling over 5 minutes. We
are getting nitty gritty. We are talking about how someone needs to be bumped up to the 8th in the rotation rather than 9th or 10th. That is exactly what this podcast is about.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I just think I think you're right. I think he does add a certain energy. I mean, he's a better athlete than a lot of their wing options in terms of just literal foot speed. Which adds a certain energy, a certain verve. I think he's been really good cutting. I think he's been really good in the baseline. I think he's been really good in transition. I think he's been not gun shy from 3, which is good enough for me, even though the percentage is still in rebound mode after that shoulder injury. And then I don't think the Cavs have been very good on defense the last couple weeks, and he's the best point of attack defender on the team. And I think we saw a little bit of I don't know, maybe this is not fair, but during the end of that game when Hunter was on DeRozan, I was like, that's not the same as Isaac on DeRozan.
No.
At least that's how it felt to me. I mean, DeRozan got both of them a couple times. He had a great game. Don't get me wrong. And he'll get guys no matter who they are. So this is not like slander, but I still do feel like for guard defense and wing defense, he's still the best option on the team when you need stops.
He's going to be the one that's going to deter people from getting shots up. Like there was a couple defensive possessions against the Clippers where he just completely ruined what they were doing in the half court, right? Like you're not going to get a shot up because he's getting into you. He's disrupting your dribble. He's not letting you get to your spots. Whereas DeAndre Hunter, I think he's played really good defense within the context of the system, but where he's really beneficial is, those longer shooters where, you're playing very good sound defense, but I'm just going to rise up even if I can't get to my spots. You're Jason Tatum types. DeAndre does a terrific job of providing length in those instances, but I do think you're correct in pointing out, hey, there's a difference here in terms of the way that they impact things defensively. And I think getting athleticism on the court needs to be a priority. That's something that this team has lacked at times. And I just think with the variety of options, putting yourself in a box where you are taking some length and athleticism off of the court and playing three guards, there's going to be nights and there's going to be teams where you can do that. I just don't think if you're going to have a set in stone rotation where, at least for a first half, this is what we're going to do, and then we're going to adjust in the second half. I don't think that needs to be a mandatory look that you go to in the first half of every game.
Yeah, it's like the difference between like a perk and like what you're building the house out of. Like I feel like knowing that they can go to that 3-guard lineup, and if they really need a little extra ball handling juice and they need some 3-point movement, off ball movement from Sam to try to ungunk things, like, all right, cool, let's see what that does. We're in a funk. Let's try that lineup. I just don't like it as the starting choice.
Yeah.
Like in general, that's the way I felt about Sam. Is like I just don't. I love and like talk about like they have so many options. They have such an abundance of choice because this team is good that like Sam 2 years ago would be a guy where we're just like play him, like he's got to be in. Whereas now they have this abundance of riches where I kind of am sitting being like, maybe that guy who I would have begged for against the Knicks 2 years ago, maybe he should be our break glass in case of emergency option. Like 2 years ago, our break glass in case of emergency option was Danny Green on one leg. So like it is reflective of how good things are that we're even having this conversation.
And I think it's reflective of the fact that we've actually had all of the options available for a stretch, right? Like you said, this is the first time we're really kind of giving some real thought to the rotation of, hey, do we want to be doing that? I think some of that is a product of now everybody is available, right? Like we've had the odd rest game here or there. The entire supporting cast has been available. So we're finding out what decisions this coaching staff wants to go with in terms of the rotation. I think the coaching staff is still making those decisions and making those determinations. I think it's important to point out, as we said earlier, the Clippers, Sam was kind of that unquestioned seventh guy in the rotation. Against the Kings, that shifted. Okoro moved up within the rotation. Sam moved down. So I think this is something that Kenny's already doing and playing around with. But to me, what we're just discussing is kind of our feelings towards it, why we feel the way that we do, and kind of the chain reaction of other decisions that come from any of these moves.
Yeah, it's gonna be we'll see. We'll see. I think Danny Cunningham reported no injuries. Reported that the injury report said no injuries for tomorrow on the report.
Hey, that's nice.
So the team should be whole in that game. Do we get off the schneid against a all-time bad vibes Suns team?
I mean, I hope so. This, not to rehash what we said the last time the Cavs lost multiple games in a row, but it's all right. Like, it's going to come down to when do they want this to stop? Because I think anytime this Cavs team has had a slump, it's largely been self-inflicted. What they need to do to turn it around is all things that they've done this season. They have turned it around after slumping for a bit. We know exactly what they're capable of doing. This isn't something that is producing those types of concerns for me of, oh, have we been figured out? Is our insanity run over? No, I that's not the type of stuff that I'm worrying about here. So my guess is, just based on the history of this team, yeah, they're going to turn it around. They're going to come out with a good effort. Having Darius back is going to make a difference. He still is that guy that elevates the offense more than anybody else on the team. So I feel good about that. But we'll need to see. We'll need to see what effort they come out with.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. They've really responded. They won 19 out of 20 games after their last 3-game a losing streak. They have been an unbelievably resilient team, even when they've had these little gullies of play. So excited to see how they respond.
Do you have, from this stretch, either a short-term or long-term concern that's kind of been brought to the forefront of your mind?
No, I think the fact that, in a way, I'm just kind of happy that if the guards are going to slump, they're slumping in March and not, and ideally not in, I mean, there's no reason for me to think that they're going to just slump for the rest of the year.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's ultimately possible. So I'd rather no slump at all. But like, if you're going to have a dip, giving yourself some runway to get yourself back into good form, like, I guess that's my only real angst at this point.
Yeah.
I just want the guards to be back to like their killer selves. And Justin, I'm just going to keep looking at that hand for Jarrett. It bothers me. It angsts me.
Yeah.
I respect the crap out of him for going out there and playing every night in a league where a lot of guys don't do that when they're not at 100%. But I just am like, is that going to get better? Because like he took that, he tried to do a power dribble with it against Sacramento and lost the ball right away. Like, I just worry about that hand.
I did feel good about him breaking his fall on that one time and like not getting up and grimacing. Like he just kind of got up after landing on both hands. Made me think back to Max. I think it was against Orlando where he landed on his taped up hand and was in a lot of pain. So I was like, okay, well, at least, he could survive that fall to the ground without re-aggravating it in a dramatic way. So that was at least a good sign. My short-term concerns are all injury related, like just, Donovan scoring, get that back to 100%. Jarrett, get that hand healed up. Make sure that there's nothing nagging. My macro concern from this, though, I've already talked enough about DeAndre Hunter not playing enough with the core. That continues to be a bit of a concern for me. But a bit of my concern, with guys dealing with some nagging stuff, is if we are managing, soft tissue issues and stuff like that down the stretch, it does prevent a little bit of a ramp up before the postseason. And that was something that Kenny said that he wanted to do is, all right, let's increase the minutes. Let's test these guys in some of these games. If you're doing that, it makes it harder to accomplish those goals. And I do think that Kenny has already started that. I think when you look at March, the minutes per game for the core guys has ticked up. It was all, 30 and below. In March, Donovan's playing 33 minutes a game. Darius is playing 33. Mobley's playing 32. So I think Kenny's doing that in, a responsible manner of ramping those minutes up. But if you're dealing with kind of these nagging issues, makes me wonder, okay, can you do a full ramp up, or is this going to be something where, hey, we weren't able to do it exactly how we were hoping to end the season, and we basically have to take advantage of this week off that we get during the play-in to use this as a training camp and hit the ground running, maybe even using the first round as an opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and then you look at the other contenders around the league and you go, well, everyone else has these problems too. Jalen Williams.
100%, yeah.
Jalen Williams is hurt for OKC. Brunson's hurt for the Knicks. Boston has a perpetual carousel of their guys missing time right now. So, as disappointing as it would be not to just be in perfect form with this perfect upward curve on the way into the playoffs, it doesn't look like anyone else is going to get that either. So, at some point...
It isn't, but whether it's fair or not, I'm fully self-absorbed. I want the Cavs to have as many competitive advantages as possible. when it comes to them versus Boston, Boston's going to be the favorite. Boston should be the favorite. We need to have our best game. We need to have our A game. We need to minimize the number of stretches that we're allowing Boston to go on runs, because they're going to go on runs in those games. They're likely going to steal a game in Cleveland. So you have to be, mentally ready for that and ready to take one back in Boston. All of that, the smallest little things, every little thing that contributes to the margin for error, I'm going to hope that is maximized on the Cavs side.
Oh, I certainly
increase the
hope it
chances
as
of
well.
winning the series.
I just think it's good to balance out the angst with knowing that other teams are working through this. Now, OKC is just on a ridiculous tear right now anyway, but and that's why they have taken the number 1 overall seed away from us. But yeah, it's going to be a lot to learn. Damn, the Rockets have won 8 in a row. I didn't realize they'd reclaimed the 2 seed. Anyway, sorry. Now I'm just standings reading. The best podcasting there is.
Yeah. No, I think, that's my biggest macro concern. I don't worry about, can the defense work? Yeah. The defense, we know exactly what this team is capable of doing on that end. I think the offense has shown enough regular season track record here to not worry about that. Beyond, the normal concerns that we had of, hey, we need to see this translate to the postseason for the first time. I don't think whether they finish hot or cold from that perspective, that's not going to change, that being a question mark, that being a concern heading into the postseason. We need to see Darius elevate his game in the playoffs. I still feel like, the Knicks series was fine, but I want to see him take that step forward and have a great series. I want to see Evan Mobley have a great offensive series. I want to see everything click the way that we've seen it click in the regular season in the postseason. None of that's going to be answered here in the regular season. As I said before, we already know what the grade is for this year when it comes to the regular season. They've done the work. They've got their A+. This is all just extra credit for the rest of the year. But, it isn't going to impact the concerns or confidence heading into the playoffs for me, because I know that this team is capable of flipping the switch and being great in that spot. I also know that they are capable of letting their bad habits get the worst of them and making things tougher on themselves than they need to.
Yeah, I guess we can kind of close with me just saying it's kind of nice though that their bad habits are not what I would consider fatal flaw bad habits. They're just oh, we weren't paying attention and turned it over 4 times in 6 possessions. It's that kind of stuff you presume won't be as much of a problem in the playoffs when you're sharper and every game is life and death. But I guess we'll see. But I don't see 2 years ago it was hey, since the All-Star break, we're 30th in defensive rebounding. That seems scary. I'm not seeing a lot of those bellwethers,
No,
there's something.
It's usually, hey, we had a stretch where we've been traveling for a while, and the focus isn't there, as you said. Turnovers. Hey, we lost a noon game. We lost against a team that's missing its
those
stars.
Afternoon matinees. These children are staying up too late. Rabble.
How many times has it been the other team's missing a star? We take the team a little too lightly and they end up winning that game. That kind of stuff is exactly the type of losses that we see with this team. That's not something that I'm worried about translating to the playoffs. The concerns are the concerns that are always going to be there, which are fair and valid, and that's just what teams get until they get to the top of the mountaintop and win a championship. So we'll see how that pans out. Appreciate everyone tuning in on YouTube. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be a part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.